before we get going here, one of the things I really want to underscore is that yes, you can make more meals from scratch, but you don't have to. I don't want to mislead anyone into thinking that we never eat out or we never use convenience foods, but we do eat about 80% of our meals from scratch and at home. And with the right tips and recipes in place, you can do that too. So I don't want you to think that I'm telling you that you can do more or you can do better or that you should do more cooking. I'm just saying that if you want to incorporate more scratch made meals, I totally believe that you can. But with that said, let's dive right into some tips and recipes for making scratch made meals. So one of the first things that I think is really important when it comes to creating or cooking more scratch made food in your home is to be prepared. For me, that doesn't really mean meal planning. Instead, I like to keep a well-stocked pantry and keep food prepared so I can make easy meals. Now, what I'm doing here is I'm chopping up some onions and then sticking them in the fridge so they are ready to go anytime I need to use them. I also steam some broccoli because that's a pretty versatile vegetable that my whole family likes. And I'm also roasting a whole chicken. And if you've been watching my videos on YouTube for the last year and a half or so, you're probably so tired of hearing me talk about a roasted chicken, but I swear it is the unsung hero of the kitchen. And with these ingredients, with the exception of the onions, they are all cooked and ready to go. So I really like to keep things on hand that are cooked, and then I can just combine them in different ways to make different meals. But you do need to give yourself the time to actually make those ingredients. You don't have to make a full meal with them, but you do still have to cook them. So maybe a Sunday reset is a good time to do that. I have a lot of Sunday reset videos that I'll link in the description box. Or like I'm doing on this particular day, I'm just spending a Monday morning getting these ingredients together while my daughter is in preschool. I am roasting this chicken in the oven. I actually have the recipe for this easy roasted chicken over on my website at moonandmagnolia.com. It is delicious. Usually I would recommend stuffing it with an onion or a lemon because when you stuff a chicken like that, it helps it cook a little more evenly and it gives it some flavor. But I actually didn't have anything to stuff the bird with and it worked out just fine. So I'm simply just seasoning it with salt and pepper. You don't have to make it fancy. And then I am putting it in the oven and I roast it pretty high. I think it's like 450 or 475 and then let it come all the way down to room temperature before picking it. Now, if you don't have the time to roast a chicken, that's not a problem at all. You can cook it in an Instant Pot, which is a really great way to cook a chicken quickly. You can even cook a whole chicken from frozen. You just have to keep it in the Instant Pot longer. The only thing I don't like about doing that is it gets hard to pull the meat off because the chicken kind of falls apart and then the meat gets mixed in with all the other bits and pieces that you would usually strain out. So I prefer roasting it, but if I'm in a pinch, I do use the Instant Pot. I'll show you how I use that chicken and broccoli later in this video, but first, let's look at a really easy recipe. I just mentioned this, I actually think it was on my last YouTube video, that the Instant Pot is really a busy day's best friend. And that's because you can basically use the same recipe and method for anything you make in it. So here I am just melting a little bit of butter. I have the Instant Pot on the saute feature. And then I'm throwing in some stew meat that I'm browning. And then I'm also throwing in some of those onions that I had chopped earlier in the day. Now, you don't always have to sear things. I often don't sear anything in the Instant Pot because I don't want that added step, but I do have a little bit of extra time on this day. So I'm just searing this and then cooking it until those onions are translucent. But the thing with the Instant Pot is that you only need about a cup of liquid for it to pressurize and anything with flavor. So here I am adding in a little bit of salt and pepper, always seasoning with a little salt and pepper. And then I'm also pouring in some home canned chicken bone broth. Lately, I've been really into canning bone broth and stocking my pantry with homemade pantry staples. So anytime I roast a chicken, I've been boiling the bones and then pressure canning the broth. And I'll show you how to do that on my blog soon. So make sure you sign up for the email list so you can get that recipe. But by keeping that bone broth on hand, it's really easy for me to add flavor and even nutrition into a really quick and easy meal. And now you don't have to make your own bone broth, but it is really delicious if you do. And then I also added a little bit of sherry, some Worcestershire sauce, and a little bit of thyme. And then I pressure cooked this on high for about 25 minutes. But I did taste it. And after 25 minutes, I decided it needed a few more minutes. When all was said and done, I think I pressure cooked it for about 30 minutes, but I think it could have gone even closer to 35 or 40 minutes, but it was still fine. But you really don't have to overthink or overcomplicate an Instant Pot recipe. You don't even have to follow a recipe. Throw the food in there, add a cup of liquid or at least a cup of liquid so it can pressurize, put something in with a little bit of flavor, salt, pepper, and cook it. Then I did take out the meat and the onions, and then I like to use what's left in the Instant Pot as a gravy. This is a great way to save a little bit of money and to also stretch your ingredients as far as you can. So I'm making a little cornstarch slurry, which is approximately about equal parts cornstarch and water. I don't really measure them, so you can eyeball it. But once that liquid is boiling, I'm just pouring the slurry in and then whisking it until it has thickened. And you can do that with anything in the Instant Pot. It is so easy. I just showed something similar on my last video. It was like a totally different type of meal, but the process was identical. I'm going to serve this over homemade mashed potatoes. You could use anything you want, rice, egg noodles, anything you have on hand will work. But I always keep freeze-dried mashed potatoes on hand. Now, of course, you have to have a freeze dryer to make freeze-dried mashed potatoes. If you want to learn more about that, I'll leave a link to my recipe and tutorial for freeze-drying mashed potatoes down in the description box. But anything that you have in your pantry that goes with meat and gravy will work. So freeze-dried mashed potatoes, you simply just take them out, put them in a pot, and then you add some liquid. I like to use water and milk and of course some butter and salt and rehydrate them. So they are as easy to make as store-bought instant mashed potatoes, but they are 100% homemade mashed potatoes with no weird ingredients in them. So I really like to make these for my family. If you are using something like freeze-dried mashed potatoes, I recommend reconstituting them while you're cooking everything in the Instant Pot. They are not quite as fast to absorb the liquid as a store-bought instant mashed potato, so just give them a little bit of time to rehydrate. And because I have a bunch of cooked broccoli on hand, that would make a great side for this dinner. All in all, this took 30 minutes to make. Okay, I want to show you a really fast way to have a completely scratch-made pizza on a busy night. Whenever I think pizza, that sounds something like a Friday night because it involves a lot of work and prep. But if you prep yourself in advance, it is not that much work. And in fact, this was the fastest thing that I made out of all the recipes I'm showing you today. The trick is you need to have your pizza dough ready to go. So I make a year's worth of sourdough pizza dough at one time and then I freeze it. And anytime I want to use that dough, I pull it out the morning of and let it thaw. I have a full video tutorial and a blog post about how to make freezer-friendly pizza dough and how to prep it for freezing. I'll leave links for those in the description box. But you can see here, this dough is thawed and ready to go. And all I'm doing now is just pressing it out sort of into a flatbread shape on a well-floured counter. I'm making a walnut pesto pizza with ham and asparagus for more of a spring theme. You can make any type of pizza you want, but the trick to that is, for a busy weeknight at least, is don't use any toppings that require you to cook them in advance. So nothing like sausage, for example. So I'm simply just slicing up the asparagus so it's thin. I chopped up a little bit of ham. You could also use prosciutto, but the prosciutto was so expensive at the store. It was cheaper for me to buy a pound of ham than it was to get 3 ounces of prosciutto. So that's what I'm using. And so all my ingredients are prepped and ready to go. And I'm using this homemade basil pesto with walnuts that I made in the summer. And it's been in my freezer waiting for the right opportunity for use. So that's another great example of how you can make scratch-made ingredients, throw them in the freezer, and then use them on busy nights. I'm not much of a meal planner in the sense that I don't sit down and jot out a week's worth of meals and then figure out what I have and what I need to get from the grocery store to make those meals. But I do meal plan in the sense of in the morning, I figure out what I'm going to make that day and I pull out any ingredients that need to thaw for that day if necessary. Now, that's not to say that I don't forget to take things out of the freezer to thaw because I actually forget to do that a lot. But if I can get my act together in the mornings and get everything out of the freezer, that makes scratch cooking so much easier. All I'm doing is just putting that pesto on the pizza that was made with basil from our garden, which makes it extra special, and then topping it with the asparagus, ham, cheese, a little bit of Parmesan, and then I baked it for about 10 minutes at 450, and that was it. This pizza took about 15 minutes in total to make. And what's really amazing about that is it's homemade sourdough pizza dough, it's homemade pesto with basil from our garden, and then it is just some simple ingredients that I threw on top. And it was so easy. And this ended up being our favorite thing that I made for this video. I feel like the other thing I should mention about a really quick pizza is don't get wrapped up in shaping your pizza. My husband can make a perfectly circular pizza. I cannot do that, not efficiently at least. Don't even worry about it. Just press it out with your fingertips and then make yourself a pizza. And with something this fast and that easy, you don't even have to wait until Friday for family pizza night. Okay, next up is some baked chimichangas. Now, don't get me wrong, I love a fried chimichanga, but I do not have time on a busy weeknight to fry anything, so I am making a baked version. And I'm using ingredients that I have already prepared. So that was a can of home canned pinto beans. I have the recipe and tutorial for that on my blog over at moonandmagnolia.com. I'll leave a link for that in the description box. And now we are using that chicken that I roasted yesterday. So in the bowl, I have some of the onions from the day before that I chopped up a little bit more, home canned pinto beans, some of the chicken that I roasted the day before, a jar of salsa. Usually I would use homemade salsa, but I'm out for the season. I won't have any more until tomatoes are in season. And then some cheddar cheese and a little bit of chili powder. You could throw anything in here that sounds good to you or that you have on hand. You could throw in some green chilies, a little bit of corn, whatever you have on hand that sounds good in something like a chimichanga. Then I'm just mixing these up until those ingredients are thoroughly combined. And then I am rolling them in some tortillas. Sometimes I keep homemade tortillas on hand. Honestly, I haven't done that in a while because it is a little bit labor intensive for my days right now. But I'm just placing the filling in the middle of the tortilla, and then I'm kind of rolling it like you would a burrito, just kind of tucking it as I roll, and then placing that in the baking dish seam side down. But what's really nice about this is all those ingredients were already cooked and ready to go, so I didn't have to worry about it. Now here, I'm just kind of pressing on them just to get that filling so it disperses evenly, and then I'm brushing them with a little bit of melted butter. Because these are not fried, I still want a little bit of crispiness, so I'm putting butter on them. And then I bake them for about 20 minutes at 400 degrees. And you can see these turned out beautiful. We thought these were delicious, and when you can see the top of that tortilla is a little bit flaky, it was really good. This was really easy to make. The only reason it wasn't faster than the pizza is just because it takes a little bit longer to bake, but they are so easy and so good. Last up is a really easy chicken and broccoli. And now that we're here, this was actually probably the fastest recipe, but I did have to make all the ingredients for this the day before. But now that I'm putting them together, this was really fast, like 5 or 10 minutes kind of fast. So first I'm just boiling some ramen noodles. If you have leftover rice, that would be great. Or if you have some other type of starch that you would like to pair chicken and broccoli with, that would work great too. But we have a pack of ramen noodles, so that's what I'm using. And the sauce is a variation of the sauce that I use for my beef and broccoli recipe over on my blog at moonandmagnolia.com. But in short, it is a little bit of soy sauce, a little bit of rice vinegar, or you can even use balsamic if you want, brown sugar, a little bit of sherry. And then I also threw in the rest of that chicken bone broth just to make sure it doesn't go to waste. Just a side note, if you start canning your own broth, you will never waste a drop of broth again because you put a lot of effort into it. So I'm making sure that doesn't get wasted. And again, I threw in a cornstarch slurry just to thicken it up. And then it's like an assembly line. Put the noodles in, top it with some of that chicken from the day before and some of the broccoli with your scratch-made sauce. And that is dinner. This one probably took me just under 10 minutes total, including cooking the noodles and making the sauce, and it's totally homemade and so delicious. This is actually one of my husband's all-time favorite meals. Cooking does not have to be fancy, but it does have to be done. Whether we're making food from scratch or not, we do have to eat a couple times a day. So I hope these recipes and these tips inspired you and gave you a few ideas for how you can get homemade meals on the table with a little more ease. If you found this helpful or inspiring, don't forget to sign up for the email list. When you do, I will send you all of my recipes, tutorials, videos, blog posts, and more directly to your inbox. Thank you so much for stopping by today, and I'll see you again next time.